Hello, it's Andrew Eborn here, and welcome to another edition of Lives on Lockdown. Hello, and welcome back to another edition of Andrew Eborn's Lives on Lockdown. And I'm joined today by Mahdi Gilbert. How are you doing, Mahdi?
I am doing good. How are you doing?
I am doing amazingly well. So whereabouts are you?
I am in Toronto, in Canada.
Ah, the other Toronto. We love it there. It's got to be good. How is lockdown in Toronto?
To be honest, it's been miserable. It's been cold. We've had the longest winter. It's May, and last week it was snowing over here, so not very good.
I love Toronto. I visit, my cousin actually lives in Toronto.
Okay.
And I love Canada. I visited lots of places. People always think that when they're round the corner in Canada, because Canada's huge, obviously, as you know.
Yeah.
And when I first went, I went over with our Olympic minister, Theresa May, to Vancouver when they were having the Winter Olympics many years ago in Whistler. You probably remember. And I said to my cousin in Toronto, well, I'm popping into Canada. Do you want to pop over? And what people don't realize is the distance between Toronto and Vancouver is like zillions of miles, isn't it?
It is the distance from, I think, New York to LA. I mean, it's the other side of the country. So people don't realize how big Canada is. It's a big country. It's pretty empty for most of it, just because of the massive landmass. But we do have a few big cities scattered around.
Yeah, and but it's beautiful and some of the most wonderful scenery. So I went to Banff as well. So fantastic stuff going through the Rockies, and I went to the TV festival there. I've been to many places. The fantastic lobster that you have in Maine. You have all sorts of places. And Canada, I tell you what, some of my friends decided to move all the way from London to Vancouver. As opposed to staying over here, and Vancouver is only like 2 hours from LA, so it's got a really vibrant film industry as well, hasn't it?
Yeah, it's no, it's quite an amazing place to be, and yeah, if you do get the chance, come by again and see more of the country. We have these beautiful trains that you can take across the country and see the landscape. It's really a magical place.
It is absolutely stunning. And one of the scary things were the bears, I think, because people don't realize we have a little bit of wildlife, a few foxes occasionally, but in the mountains you have bears. It's really quite scary, isn't it?
Yeah, we have bears, we have moose, and they're not too far away. Even we have coyotes that come into the city sometime now.
Right, and that's scary.
It is, because you have these empty parks and these cemeteries, which are quite empty and they have a lot of room. So people go, out for a jog or they take their dog out, and you go there and there's coyotes or, deer or moose. And you're like, whoa, this is pretty intense.
It is really sad. Well, I'm supposed to be what would normally happen before lockdown. I'm supposed to be in Cannes for the film festival at the
Okay.
moment, and somebody sent me a video of one of these wild warthogs going down the Croisette because it was deserted.
Oh.
They were looking for food. So it is extraordinary. It's extraordinary times. But what are the rules in Canada then? Run us through what's happening over there.
So I think it's pretty much the same as everywhere. We have what they call stay at home, and they close down most businesses except for some which they deemed essential. So I think for the most part, everyone's at home. However, recently they're starting to open up some things because they looked at the numbers and they thought it was safe to loosen some of the restrictions. So that's pretty good. Unfortunately, though, the border is still closed. I was really looking forward to just getting out. This is the longest I've ever been home in years. Like, I was very much looking forward to going just somewhere. I have friends all over the world where I could, magician friends who I could just go to their house, do a quarantine, and work on a new show, work on a new idea, work on something. But unfortunately, I'm here. We're doing this stuff with the webcams, and it's okay. I'm getting used to it. I like it a lot more now than I used to. At the beginning, I never did any of this stuff before, so this is all new.
No, and I think, Maddie, that's the new thing, isn't it? Because so many performers, and I speak to the rich and famous and really famous major pop stars and major rock musicians who are so used to being in front of tens of thousands of people, getting the adoration, and they're stuck. They're in lockdown in their living room. And I don't know if you saw that there was that fantastic Lady Gaga tribute concert, not the tribute, but she did a
Yeah,
charity
the
fund
Global
event.
Citizen. Yeah.
Yeah, it was just fantastic. And she got the big corporations to pay for that. My favourite moment was when all four of the Stones were at home in a little lockdown like we are. And Charlie Watts, who clearly didn't have a drum kit in front of him, was just playing to the furniture. They're just so cool, you know, it worked really well.
Yeah, I think everyone's just doing their best to encourage everybody. This has been a very hard time, so I think we're all just doing our best to keep each other encouraged in the way that we can, and it's going pretty good. I think a lot of people went through a lot of different stages being at home, different emotions, and I think what I'm seeing, the thing that I'm feeling from people is they're becoming more positive than they were a few weeks ago. So it's I think it'll be good.
Yeah, no, I think you're right. And what I always say, there's nothing better to unite people than a common enemy. So what happens is the common enemy are the virus, which they sort of turn around on that sort of
Well,
basis.
it could either be the virus or aliens. I don't know which one I prefer, but
Or maybe aliens with a virus. Maybe that'll tick both boxes.
well, yeah, but aliens. I don't know. They're both. It's such a different enemy, but
Right. The other thing which I've really enjoyed, Maddie, is going to people's living rooms, and behind them, I get to see the most glorious bookcases and different things what people are reading or pretend to read, or
yeah.
the different awards that they've won and everything else. Talk me through your bookcase. What have you got behind you? What's
Oh
going
man.
on?
Okay, so this is just one of my bookcases. This is sort of like a bookcase that I use for a background for some of my videos. So I have some stuff on it that I wouldn't ordinarily have, like this T-shirt, which I planned to put on for this interview, but I didn't get around to. I totally forgot that was there.
Oh, what does the T-shirt say?
No, it was just a shirt that I was planning to put on. But
All right.
you're in lockdown, so it's like you put stuff aside and you think you're gonna get to it, but then you're like, oh, I'm not going out, so I don't need to get dressed the same way. You just forget about things that you ordinarily would forget. But that is a funny thing that I actually forgot there. But I do have, I have this sign here, which is from a TV show that I was on in Korea. That was a name tag that they gave me, that yellow sign. I have this deck of cards that David Blaine gave me after his show here in Toronto. I have a bunch of magic books. I have books not on magic. I like to read older books. My book collection used to be massive. I gave away a lot of my books. And the reason why I gave them away is I didn't want to have anything in my room unless I was absolutely in love with it. And this sort of philosophy I have, that I want to surround myself by things that I love so that I'm inspired. So every book or anything that I only liked, I didn't love it, I liked it, I gave it away to somebody, friend or something like that. And I still read a lot. I still, you can't see my table here. It's literally filled with books that I'm reading. But I want to surround myself with things that inspire me. So every single day I wake up, I'm surrounded by things that mean something. And it's just a very inspiring thing. So that's what I try to do. But yeah, I have a bunch of books. I love to read history books. I'm not so much into fiction, but I read a lot of history books. I read a lot of books on magic. And I also just have, a bunch of souvenirs from around the world. I have I have this box here from a magic bar, Blackstone, up here, and that's in Shanghai, and that's the only magic bar like it in the world. And I was one of the first foreign performers to go there. It hasn't been open for a very long time. Unfortunately, due to the whole situation, it closed down. It couldn't stay in business, But yeah, I was there in October, and just I don't know, a bunch of stuff, really, just magic stuff.
I know, but we love it. And what's also interesting, Maddie, you mentioned that you don't fiction. I mean, now fact and fiction are merged, aren't they? We're living in extraordinary times. I don't know if you saw the movie Contagion, for
Yes,
example, which
I
was,
did.
yeah. Do you remember that? And people are
Yes.
sort of saying, well, that's it. It's like a documentary now, isn't it?
Yeah, well, for me, the problem with fiction is I have a very hard time following narratives when they're written. I'm fine watching movies, but with writing, there's so many characters and there's so many things going on, and maybe it's a failure of imagination on my part, but I just cannot follow a book. But it's interesting because I can read autobiographies, I can read history books, I can read things like that. Maybe it's just the story shaped in a different way. But what you are saying is right. We do have a merging of reality and fiction these days. And I think one of the problems is, and I think it's a problem of just information in general. I went to the University of Toronto and we have these massive libraries, massive, massive. You cannot read everything in the library. You cannot read everything. Let's say you're studying a subject, philosophy or history or mathematics or physics. You cannot in your lifetime you don't have enough time to sit down and read every single thing. So just on one subject. So we're in this time where we have more and more information, more and more content constantly being uploaded and shared across the world, and nobody knows what it means. And the way that we understand these things is to turn them into stories. And so you have different people who have different stories that they want to convey, different messages that they want to convey. And so everyone's trying to take the information that they can get to use it to create whatever story they want to create for their audience. And it's just becoming very confusing for people because you can have people who have such different worldviews, but they're literally able to create their own reality from the information. And the information is not wrong. It's just they're creating their own reality from it. And you're seeing that more and more these days. It's pretty wild.
Right, but you're absolutely right. And I always say that now you can find supporting evidence for any view. Because with the internet and Google and that sort of stuff, everybody's become an expert. The people who were experts on Brexit a few weeks ago, long, long time ago, are now experts on viruses. It's extraordinary. Everybody on social media is just going crazy. And we have all these conspiracy theories, these crazy, crazy theories. And what's happening is that the internet is great. We're swimming and drowning probably in a sea of information, 99.9999% of which is rubbish.
It is.
That's the thing.
And you do have, I think what you do have through the different platforms and everything is sort of a curation that's happening. And I think that's very useful. Even when you are studying something in magic, I can't read all the magic books in the world. There's literally tens of thousands. I don't want to read them, to be quite honest, because there's a lot of bad ones. And I have read a lot of bad ones. But what I do is I develop systems to read the information that I like. So if there's a magician that I like, I'll read their books. And then if there were magicians that influenced them, I'll trace those guys down and see if there's books written by them or stuff written about them. And then I'll try to create my own little path to be able to follow lines of thoughts and lines of communication, almost like a tree branching out. And I think it's very useful when you are trying to find information, because otherwise you become lost. And it's one of the, I think talking to some of my friends who are, I don't know if you would call them futurists, but they're very much into the technology and what's happening. They believe that the way we share information is the way that people make their living in the future, because everybody can already learn everything that they want online. They can learn any skill. They can learn how to build a car, build a piano, fly an airplane, do whatever they want really. But the biggest problem is transmitting that information effectively. So the people who are able to communicate and really transmit and teach that information are the people who are going to come out on top because they can gain a following. I have a friend who has a very successful, millions of subscribers on YouTube channel, and he teaches videography and photography. Now, there's a lot of channels like his, but he has a good personality. He's very good at explaining. He knows how to keep the explanation short, to the point, direct, and to make it useful to people. And so he has, millions and millions of people who tune in to learn from him. Could you learn all that stuff that he's teaching? Absolutely. You could learn it from another YouTube channel, but maybe it's not as appealing. So it's how do you package the information? How do you package whatever it is that you're doing, and packaging it in a way that it's desirable to your clients or your audience?
Yeah, and you're absolutely right, Maddie. I think it's all, people say don't shoot the messenger, but actually the messenger is so key in this day and age when we're talking about communication, because you can all have the message, but if you don't package it right, that's all about. I mean, we've had bizarre things. I mean, we've got the paper here. I don't know what you saw, but stay alert. Now that's the new government thing to telling us what we do. We used to have a thing saying stay at home, which people understood, but they just changed that message. And it's sort of almost as consistent, if you like, almost as consistent as the instructions for the hokey cokey, in, out, you shake it all out. It's crazy.
If you read books on propaganda and how, and I don't mean propaganda in a negative way, I'm just using the technical term, but in terms of how you communicate with large audiences, whether that's a government doing it or whoever, you have to design your message for different groups of people. There's different groups of people. There's groups of people who will read a whole newspaper. There's other groups of people who will only read a headline and will share content based on the headline. They don't even know what's in it. And then there's a group in the middle that, will read some, but they won't go further than that. So there's different groups, and there's different ways to communicate with people along all those groups. So, you have an ad like that, that's, it's almost silly in a way because of how it is. It's almost childish, but for certain people, they kind of need that to be put in their face, because let's say that whole newspaper was filled with, a 3-page article on why you should stay home and all that stuff. A lot of people would just not read that, and they wouldn't know.
No, I understand, and it is about slogans, and everything is distilled into a little soundbite, and that's the problem. And what I really love in this time, I say everybody's become an expert. The difficulty is the politicians, it becomes politicized. So they're up in the firing line. They don't really know. They had to be surrounded by scientists and experts and everything else. The people I really admire in this time are obviously the key workers, but also those scientists who just answer the question. Say, okay, this is what it means about immunology. This is what it means about a vaccine. This is the difference about being if you've had it and what that means, as opposed to the politicians who really don't know, and they struggle in interviews because they're so worried about the blame game and getting re-elected.
Well, there's so many competing parties, and one of the wild things, if you follow, I love to read the different science articles in the newspapers and stuff, and for years and years, I've always noticed that they had the most hyped up and just over-exaggerating headlines. It's always like NASA discovers new black hole and, Death Star shaped, planet or asteroid that's traveling, and it's always like so above and beyond. And then you read the article and they talk about like the technical details of what NASA or whoever actually discovered it, and it's a lot more boring.
Oh, of course.
But I think that's also a problem. We have something like this, which is an illness and a disease, and it's going around. And the people who study it, who really understand disease, talk about it in a way that's not appealing to the general end user. So then you have the media and the politicians who then come in and they use that information to communicate, but it might be different, than what is actually the scientists are saying. So it's always weird to see that sort of shift. And there's always, and this whole situation has been very eye-opening to me because, usually I'm not that confused. I like to do a lot of research, but I was so confused during this, between do the masks work? Do masks not work? And you hear all these things, you're reading these articles, and you have one expert who says, well, you can't wear a mask because you're touching your face more and then you could get infected from it. And then it's like, oh, well, you could infect other people if you don't have a mask. And so you have all this information, and you've really, because it's not communicated in the best way possible, because everyone's just trying to find a headline, something new to put as a headline.
You're right, man. It's all to do with clickbait and sensationalism. And I think what happens is, it's P.T. Barnum who said, if you want to draw a crowd, start a fight. So you then have all these people fighting about opinions and stuff like that. And the trouble is, the advice is what I said earlier. The advice is as consistent as the instructions for the hokey cokey. Because you'll get 1 minute, put your mask on, the other take it off because we're not quite sure. One is go out and exercise, the other is stay at home. And all you basically need is somebody being logical about it, explaining it like a scientist. And so we can understand, look, social distancing we get. 2 meters apart, because if you sneeze, it's going to get you. So stay 2 meters apart. We can understand that. Stay at home because you don't want to go out too much, but actually stay alert. People are a bit confused about that. What does that mean?
Stay alert means what? Because, and for me, that's a problem, for example, stay alert. Stay alert of what? You have reports of people calling the police on their neighbors because their neighbor is coughing inside their house. And they're like, oh, did you hear that? The next door neighbor coughed inside their house. Let's call the police. And that's, we know, from most people know, that's a really crazy thing to do, to call the police on your neighbors because they coughed inside their house. But for a lot of people, who don't really keep up to date to the news and stuff, they just hear there's a deadly virus. We need to keep everybody safe. Oh, no, there's somebody infected. What do we do? Let's report them to the authorities. So there's it's so hard to communicate effectively. And we're seeing the results of this in real time. And the information from all the scientists and the government so far have been, I think, fairly consistent. However, they keep releasing new information that's consistent with the old information, but it's more detailed, so it gives you a different perspective on it. And so it becomes very complex for the end user who's just receiving it and doesn't really know, how to put all those pieces together.
Sure. I mean, the other thing that happened, it was Barnard, who was the father of PR. You remember his old Dixie cups? And he said that fear is the biggest seller of all. So and that spreads more than the virus. People are so scared of doing things. And we saw over here, I don't know if you had it in Canada as well, people panicked. So what happens when the virus was first announced, people ran out and bought every possible roll of toilet paper they could. So the shelves were bare because it will last for generations, all these mountains of toilet paper that people have got.
Yeah, it's and it's actually goes against what you would want in a situation, because you do want people to be staying at home. And I know people who have been in the situation where they have to go to the grocery store 3-4 times in 1 week because they can't find anything. So it's like they have to keep going back, exposing themselves more potentially to other people than they should, just because you have that hoarding mentality because of that panic. And so there's a lot of things happening where people say one thing and they don't really understand the way people are going to react to it. So it could create a harmful situation unintentionally.
And the thing, right, so run me through the rules. And I get social distancing is obviously the same. 2 meters, is it 2 meters? Because some of the places I talk to around the world, in Belgium, for example, or the Netherlands, it's 1.5 meters. I don't know why, if people are shorter.
I don't know. Maybe it's 6 feet, 12 feet.
I'm roughly 2 meters tall. So
well, the funniest thing, so I live in a building and we have elevators. And so, the elevator's not even 6 feet or whatever, 10 feet. I don't even know what it is, but it's not wide enough to technically have 2 people. So they put up these drawings in the elevator. So okay, if 2 people are coming into the elevator, one person's going to stand here, one person's going to stand here. You're both going to face the wall, so you're not breathing on each other, and then you're going to get out. And, you kind of see all this stuff. And even I was looking at CNN, they did a story on Disneyland Shanghai reopening. One of my friends went there. One of my friends from Shanghai went there this week. And anyways, they were showing this whole thing on the news of how they're doing the social distancing in Disneyland. And I was just looking at it, and like it all makes sense, but at the same time, it's really silly when you see it happening. And I think what will happen is when you have all these people out together and you have all these rules, I think people are just going to feel more and more relaxed and unintentionally or intentionally just break the social distancing guidelines that have been established. So I think, we're going to see some interesting results.
Well, and that's what happened. People always say history repeats itself, but they don't learn the lessons of history. So the last big one which we had over here was in 1918, which was what they call the Spanish flu, wrongly named, but for other reasons. And what happened, it was the second, when people relaxed a bit, that was the worst, because all of a sudden everyone came out again from lockdown, and that was the worst, most tragic situation. But run me through it. So that social distancing is there in Canada. Restaurants, I assume, are closed at the moment?
Yeah, restaurants are closed. You can do, I think you could do pickup, through drive-thrus. You can do delivery from a lot of places. What else is?
Schools? Do you have schools open at the moment?
No, schools are not open. They're talking about opening up the some of the daycares, but I doubt it. I don't think it'll open up. Maybe it could in a month or so. I'm not too sure.
Okay. But because we over here, Maddie, we have schools for essential workers. So whilst it's not open for everybody, the children of essential workers they can go to school still.
Oh, that's good. Yeah, because look, I mean, it's hard because you can't leave the children of a certain age unattended. You're gone for these long shifts. You have police officers; they have 12-hour shifts. You have nurses and doctors; they're gone. You have to do something with the kids.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So what happens to the kids at the moment? Are they not allowed to go to school? They have to be at home?
Honestly, I don't know. Okay. From what I understand is there's no children in school here right now.
Okay.
I assume that most of it is just being taken care of by the families and just individuals making their own private arrangements. Maybe they get babysitters or they do something. But hopefully they can, figure that out, because that's something I didn't even think of, to be quite honest.
Yeah, it's a worry. If you're on as you say, if you've got two parents, both of whom are working, what happens to the kid?
Exactly.
The kids.
And we're I think a lot of people are doing pretty. I think people are doing better than they were, but it's hard for people to be at home. I've actually been getting used to it. For the first few weeks, I had a very hard time, to be quite honest. Now I've sort of gotten used to it. I just feel, though, it's generally unhealthy. I haven't been outside much because it's been so cold. Now it's warming up. We're allowed to go out. We're allowed to go for walks and do all that stuff. Hopefully they can open up the parks and, not necessarily for people to be touching stuff and communicating, but, I have these beautiful hiking paths near me, I
know, they're beautiful there. I've been there.
And to be honest, they're always empty. They're always empty. Like, I take my dog out. We go for a long walk, 2 hours, 3 hours. We don't even see anyone.
Oh, what dog do you have? What dog? What breed?
I have an Australian cattle dog.
Oh, fantastic! Huge, amazing.
Yeah.
What's your dog called?
His name is Akaba.
Akaba, come on, that's a real dog's name. I love it. Yeah, we'll have to see Akaba next time. It'd be really, really good. So talk about you. Let's fill it in the background. Were you born in Canada?
Yeah, I was born in Toronto. I was born here, and I've lived here for most of my life. A few years ago, I moved to the U.S., and I had been living in the U.S., and I still technically, right now, well, I have a work visa. So my work visa was expiring at the beginning of this year, so I reapplied for it, And with this whole situation, I'm here now just waiting for my work visa to renew. Hopefully, I think it might have a bit of a delay because of certain government offices have been closed. I hope it's not too much of a delay, but I really don't know when the next time I'm going to be working again, to be quite honest. I have been doing I had, existing clients and existing work, and some of that people have requested me to do through Zoom and through, different webcam type services. And so I had to sit down and really figure out how to do that and how to redesign some of my work for that. And to be honest, I was not a fan of it. I still don't think it's anywhere as good as the real thing. But I'm also experimenting with new types of magic that I'm doing from home, magic that happens in people's hands if they have a deck of cards at home or if they have, different stuff like that. So I have been playing with some interesting stuff, but I really do hope to be in front of audiences again. I don't know when.
As I say, I talk to lots of people from both from all sorts of people in the entertainment world, from massive rock stars to jobbing musicians to magicians to jugglers to comedians. There's a certain hunger for a live audience and a real reaction. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, well, I think people miss the human interaction. Even me, like, I'm not crazy about the restaurants and the bars and all that stuff. But when this is over, I want to go to the restaurants. I want to go to the bars. I want to, I just want to be, I miss being with people. I miss being with people. And it's been very hard. I think being isolated is very hard on people's mental health. We're not designed for it. We're social creatures. We get chemical releases in our brains when we see our friends and the people that we love, when we see them smiling and then we touch them, they touch us. We actually have biochemical reactions from these things. So I think it is a hard thing. But
you're absolutely right. And in the UK at the moment, it's Mental Health Week, Mental Health Awareness Week. And my view is we should be aware of mental health all the time, not just for a week, but it does sort of shine a spotlight on it. And I think more times people in lockdown, you're absolutely right, Maddie, what's happening is that people are missing that interaction. You're missing that little buzz. People are trying to adapt, and it's interesting how you've adapted. And maybe after the break, you can show us something. We can play around with that sort of stuff. But I think it is interesting how performers are adapting. Some are very good at it, and some could maybe learn from others.
Yeah, well, I think people just need to find a schedule, if you don't already have a schedule in your regular life, and just try to keep things regular for yourself, because it can be very easy to, I think, become depressed when you have nothing to look forward to. And I'll tell you, in March, it was very hard for me. I think in 2 days, I lost all my work for the rest of the year. And just getting literally dozens and dozens of emails, phone calls, messages, we're not doing this anymore. And it happened to a lot of people who are, in the performing, and anybody who's in any event industry. So it was very tough. And I'll tell you, for a week or two, I don't even think I opened my email. I was just like, okay, well, I gave it my best. I guess this just isn't going to work out right now.
Yeah, and you're right, Maddie. I mean, I had the same thing. I was due to be, I travel a lot extensively with the number of shows that I put on. I also produce television and various other things. And I was supposed to be, in that week, I was supposed to be in Berlin. I was then supposed to fly to Cannes for the TV festival. I was supposed to be in Cannes for the film festival now. I had a major tour with a major artist sort out. I'm working with R.J. Gibb, who's the son of Robin Gibb from the Bee Gees. We were doing a big tour for that. All of that, overnight, disappeared.
It's tough. It's brutal, honestly. It's, and for me, only recently have I become more positive about it. For, I don't know, maybe for 2 weeks or so, I just didn't want to, I just saw that it was hopeless for now. So I'm like, okay, I can't do anything. But then, I had people, oh, can you do this over Zoom? And then I have other clients. Everybody's now, I think, planning for the recovery. So I'm hearing, about different people wanting to do events potentially in the fall. We'll see. Maybe they'll happen. Maybe they won't. We don't know right now. But I know that people want to do it. So, we're trying to make it work. If it's safe, we'll do it. If not, then, we'll.
And as you said before, Hannah, people have adapted. So what I love about the Lives on Lockdown, as I've called this series, is that we've had people from every profession, from the rich and famous to, as I say, the everyday heroes. And the reason we've done that is what Madonna said in her bath, is that it's the great equalizer. We are all locked down at home, so what can we do about it? And what I really like is people have got together and they got really creative, getting together remotely with social distancing, obviously, but get together as to find new ways that you can interact with people. In the same way as you talk about your magic, and maybe we can share some of that in the next episode, is have a look at that sort of side, see how things have changed. But what it's also done, and I find this really, really interesting, it makes you recognize what you took for granted beforehand and should have valued.
I know. There's friends of mine. And, in magic, you become friends with a lot of people who are older than you. And so I have friends who are, I guess, in the vulnerable category, and they're used to going to conventions and, they come to see shows, they go out to these places. And I realize, oh no, when's the next time I'm going to see this person? When's the next time I'm going to see this person? Maybe I can visit them. Oh no, I can't visit them. What am I going to do? Well, we keep in touch, but it's not easy. So I think everybody, is feeling hit by this situation, and everyone's doing their best. I'm looking forward to seeing people when we can see them again. But I know it's going to be tough, and a lot of events that they have every single year, like your film festival, and just these different festivals. Some of them have been going on for decades, and all of a sudden they have to cancel. They never canceled before. It's really it's really hard.
Yeah,
So
it is strange. We should have a couple of days ago had what was called the Eurovision Song Contest. You probably may have heard of it, but
yes,
it was the great unifying thing every year when you have the most glorious acts, and not always the most over the top acts that win, but it's a glorious acts come together and they sing these wonderful songs which in any other situation may not necessarily reflect the current taste. But it is a beautiful event. And this year it happened as a sort of trip down memory lane, if you like. These were the great ones of yesteryear. And they did a competition to say, well, who would have won? And surprise, surprise, ABBA, who came out of the whole Eurovision thing, were superb. But it's those sort of major events. We've had the same with sport. You have the same with obviously conventions. You have the same with magicians trying to get together. You have the film festivals, even production, trying to work out how we can do new TV and film and that sort of stuff. It's just changing the dynamic, isn't it?
it is, and we're also learning a lot about worthwhile content. I think it's very interesting to see, because being at home, when you're doing a live event, the competition is not as strong as now that everybody's at home. Because right now you want to do a live event over the internet, you're competing with Netflix, you're competing with YouTube, you're competing with these different things which are highly produced. They're produced in beautiful high definition, they have great sound, great everything. And you see some of these live streams, the technology is not always there. So it's like, how can we bring that value to people? And I think the big thing that we can take away from all this is the interaction.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely. The other big thing as well, Maddie, is actually the essence of the content. So rather than necessarily production values, so many times, and as I say, I've had lots of people on this show who come in there and just open up their hearts. And I've had a few people who turn around and so we've done a lot on mental health. We've done a lot on the challenges that everybody faces as the great equalizer. We've got people who've spoken about positivity and just change the way you look at the world. And I found that journey really, really interesting. So even though production values are not what we're all used to with the really high, here's a red camera here, and this is new AI to enhance this, it really is stripped down. Because the view, a lot of times, you have, I always say about movies, you can spend an absolute fortune on production for a movie, but if the script is wrong, it's not going to be a good movie. And what I love about this time, we're stripping everything bare, if you like, looking beneath the kimono and saying, actually, here's a really good bit of content, because the essence of what people are saying is really so vital.
Well, for me, the big takeaway, and this was a weird lesson for me, but the takeaway for me was, how strong is that relationship that you have with the person who's engaging with your content? Because the only reason why anybody's going to want to engage with you is they feel they have some sort of relationship with you, as you know, as you're doing this stuff. So for me, that was a huge takeaway. What is the relationship? Why, you know, I can talk to one of my, I can do a Zoom, I can talk to one of my friends on the phone for, you know, 2 hours straight. I can do it. It's, you know, it's fun. We're laughing, we're joking around. If I'm going to sit down for 2 hours to watch a movie, or even to watch anything, a live stream, whatever, I'm going to read the description. I'm going to, you know, I'm going to maybe check out the reviews. How many stars does it have? Oh, it only has 3 stars. Maybe I'll give it 5 minutes and see if it's good, you know? But, you know, if one of my friends calls me, boom, pick up the phone, we go. There's no timer, there's nothing. Hey, you know, we get right into it. So I think the future, I mean, it's not the future, it's what's happening right now. But what I'm understanding is, you need to be able to have that relationship so that your audience, whether that's one person or whether that's, you know, 10,000 people, can really feel like they are spending time with you, and that they want to spend time with you, or with whatever, you know, maybe they want to spend time with your characters, whether you're making a movie or, you know, whatever it is, but they have some sort of relationship to what you are doing.
Yeah, and that's key. And I think that is definitely one of the positives to come out of it. May I tempt you in a future episode, maybe straight after this? Would you be able to show us something?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, fantastic. Well, for now, Mahdi Gilbert, thank you very much for joining us, and we'll see you in the next episode.
Excellent. Thank you.
Take care. There you go. That was Mahdi Gilbert, all the way in Toronto, Canada. And he'll be back in the next episode to show us some of his magic. Join me, Andrew Eborn, lives on lockdown, right here on Octopus TV. Don't forget to subscribe and put your comments in the comment section below. See you next time.